Hey there, tonight I'm looking at this game, Ascension Apprentice Edition. It's a two-player deck building game, competitive, and I'll show you how it works and then I'll give you my thoughts on it. So this is how the game is going to look when you set up to play Ascension. The goal of the game is to acquire more honor points than your opponent. Honor points are represented by these tokens here, which start out, you start with 60 points worth of honor in the corner here. And they come with some extra tokens so you can make change as needed. And the other way that you can get honor is from cards that will be in your deck. This card, the Star Child for example, is worth 2 honor points if it's in your deck at the end of the game. That's the object of the game. The way the game works, it's a deck building game. So you start out with your own deck of cards. Each player has the same cards in their deck to start with. As you can see, you have basically two types of cards in your deck to begin with. You have these militia, which are worth 1 power, and you have these apprentices, which are worth 1 rune. You have 2 militia and 8 apprentices in your deck at the start of the game. So on your first turn, you're going to draw 5 cards. And my first 5 cards are all apprentices here. So I can play all 5 of these cards to get 5 runes, and I might as well, because at the end of my turn I'm going to discard any cards that I have left in my hand. So I'm going to play all 5 of these cards. That produces 5 runes. Now I use those runes to acquire heroes out of this center row. And the cost, or how many runes I have to pay to acquire a hero, is indicated in the top right corner here with the same triangular rune symbol. So I'm going to go ahead and spend 3 to buy this guy. Now you'll notice he's an enlightened hero. There's basically 4 factions of characters that you can buy from. He's, like I said, enlightened. This is a Machina construct, not quite a hero, but I'll explain the difference in a minute. We have a couple of monsters here in the center lane, and then we have a void hero and a life-bound hero. Each of these factions has a little bit different theme or some common traits as far as what types of abilities they have. But like I said, I'm going to spend 3 to go ahead and buy this guy. When I buy him, he goes to my discard pile, and I immediately replace him with a card off the top. In this case, this Wolf Shaman off the top of the center deck. Now I have 2 runes left, so I'm going to go ahead and buy this Spike Vixen as well. And there we go. So having used all of my cards, I discard the cards that I have left, or the cards that I've used, plus any that were left in my hand, which there weren't. And then I would draw 5 more cards, which you start with a deck of 10 cards, so that's going to be the rest of my cards. Now my opponent would take a turn. He'd buy some of these cards probably, or maybe fight these villains. But then it would be my turn again, and we see what I have here. I've got 3 runes this time and 2 power. Now I can use these 2 power to fight monsters. There's 2 monsters in the center row right now, but this guy would take 5 and this guy would take 3. Fortunately, you always have access to these 3 cards over here. These are 2 heroes that you can always buy. This is a Mystic. He costs 3 runes, but he gives you 2 runes. And this is a Heavy Infantry. He costs 2 runes, but he gives you 2 power. And then you have this monster, which is a Cultist. He takes 2 power to defeat. So, I'm going to use the 2 power that I have here to defeat the Cultist. Now, normally, when you defeat a monster, like if I were to defeat this guy, for example, he goes over here to the Void. And then he would be replaced with another card from the deck. In the case of the Cultist, that doesn't happen. The Cultist, there's basically an infinite supply of them, so he always stays there when you defeat him. What happens is you just get the reward that's spelled out there, which is 1 honor. So I would defeat him. I would get to take one of these honor tokens, put it in front of me. Now I have 1 honor. I could also buy one of these guys if I liked. I have 3 runes, so I'm going to go ahead and spend 3 runes to get this Mystic. and put him in my discard pile, and that's it. So now I discard the cards that I've used, and I discard them here, and I draw 5 more. But as you can see, my deck has been depleted. So at this point, I would have to shuffle my discard pile, which I can't do one-handed, and then that becomes my new deck. And I draw 5 cards from there, and as you can see, now I'm starting to draw some of the cards that I've acquired over the last couple of rounds. Now, the cool thing about that is these cards are going to be better than the cards I started out with. For example, this card gives me 1 power, much like my infantry or my militia, but he also lets me draw a card, so I would immediately draw another card. It gives me 1 more rune to work with this turn. This guy over here doesn't give me any runes or any power to get more cards with, but what he does let me do is he lets me banish a card from my hand. Banishing means you send that card to the void. And his text says if I choose to do that, I can acquire either a mystic or a heavy infantry, and I add it to my hand. So I'm going to take this mystic and add him to my hand. I basically got 1 more rune out of that, and I sort of upgraded that card in a sense, making my deck a little bit stronger now. That's basically how the game works. Again, I'm going to keep playing with these cards. I would go ahead and buy more heroes from the center or defeat some of these monsters. Defeating these monsters is going to give me honor, and we're going to keep doing that until, like I said, these are all depleted. Then we'll add up the points that we have from these tokens and the points that we have from cards in our deck, and whoever has the most points wins. A couple of other little details is when this deck is depleted, the game doesn't end. At that point you would take all monsters in the void and you would shuffle them and they would become the center deck. I also mentioned constructs. Constructs are, you buy them with runes, much like you would heroes, but they're different in that once they come into your hand, so you buy them, they go to your discard pile, eventually you're going to shuffle your discard pile, and then you're going to draw them. When you play them, they stay in play in front of you, and they give you some kind of benefit every round, rather than just being played and discarded. And that's basically the game. So that's how a game of Ascension works, and now for my thoughts on it. It's a pretty fun game. It's a very generic fantasy theme, so it's not going to stand out in that respect. Although the artwork is pretty cool. It's got a really different look to it. It's got almost like an oil painting kind of look. I don't know. That's not really, doesn't quite express how it looks, but it has a neat look to it. It's a different art style than you might see on a lot of other games, so that's pretty cool. I like the 4 different factions, add some personality to it, and the different monsters that you face kind of give, along with the different heroes you can recruit, kind of give you a sense of a universe and a conflict going on. Even though there isn't like a real strong narrative to the game, you kind of get the sense of, you know, that what this conflict is and who's fighting who. So that's kind of cool. I have to compare it to other deck building games. Well, let me tell you first, if you've never played a deck building game, this is actually an excellent one to try. It's very inexpensive. You can get it online for like $10 or less, and it has, you know, everything you need for 2 players to play, and I think two people could enjoy this game, you know, for a few dozen plays before they had seen all the different strategies that they could try. So that's, you know, that's pretty cool. If you've never played a deck building game before, I definitely recommend that you get this and try it, because it's pretty low investment, and I think it's, you know, it's a worthy game to try. Comparing it to other deck building games, I think it has a really different feel from Dominion, which is sort of like the grandfather of deck building games. It's more competitive, so if you played Dominion and felt like you weren't interacting with your opponent enough. It's a little more competitive than that, but you're still not really attacking your opponent directly. You're both kind of ganging up on the villains, the monsters that come into that center row. So it's not real head to head. It's still basically about building like the most efficient, most effective engine with your deck. But it does a good job of that. Some things that I think it improved on over, say, Dominion is I like the cards that are always available. Having that Mystic and the Heavy Infantry and the Cultists that you can always fight, that's pretty cool. The way that you have just a whole bunch of cards in that center deck that are going to come out, as opposed to like in Dominion where you have like a set of 10 cards that you can buy from, means that you're going to see a lot more variety in each game, as far as the variety of what cards you're dealing with, what cards you can put into your deck, and what monsters you can fight. So that's pretty cool. I have to also compare it to the legendary Marvel deck building game, and I think honestly if I had to choose between that and Ascension, I would go with that any day. I like, of course, the Marvel theme I think is more exciting than the relatively generic fantasy theme that Ascension has, and I think in general some of the mechanics of the Marvel legendary game are better. But also Legendary came out after Ascension, and I think they took some of the good ideas from Ascension. So, just to be fair, I think Marvel probably benefited from the existence of Ascension. Overall, I'd say, like I said, if you have never played a deck building game, definitely give this one a try. It's a fun game and it's inexpensive. There's lots of expansions that you could buy if you really enjoy it. You could get more cards, probably provide all kinds of new strategies that you could employ in your deck building, which is cool. If you already have, say, Dominion or Legendary, I don't think you're going to get something really new out of this experience. I think you could probably pass on it. Although, at $10 or less to buy it online, you might, pick it up just to get a slightly different experience from a deck builder. But yeah, overall, I think it's a pretty well designed game. Like I said, the artwork is pretty unique, pretty interesting. It's not going to replace Dominion or Legendary Marvel for me, but definitely, if you've never played a deck builder, try it out. There's no reason not to. And even if you saw my video explaining how it worked and it looked interesting to you, again, it's an inexpensive game, so you're not really putting yourself out to give it a try. And that's my thoughts on Ascension.